This happened just a few months ago. I'm Emily, 32, and I had recently moved out of my parents' house for the first time. I was excited to start my new career as a freelance graphic designer and had chosen this quiet suburban neighborhood on purpose. The houses were beige, and everything was neat and clean. I thought it would be a good space to find comfort and focus on my work. I've never stopped thinking about what happened next. It was my third night in the house when I first heard the faint tapping. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just tree branches outside. The wind was picking up that evening, and I concluded that the sound was harmless. I wanted to believe I was imagining things, but as the days went by, the tapping became a scratching sound. I couldn't ignore it. I could almost feel it during the day, like something was moving next door. I glanced over and noticed shadows flickering in the empty house's windows, even though no one lived there. At some point, I started paying attention to a pile of old furniture on the porch, covered with a tattered cloth that flapped in the wind. I thought I saw half-open blinds that hinted at someone watching me, but maybe it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Late at night, I could hear laughter. It sent a chill through me. I knew there were no children around. I'd checked my other neighbors, and no one lives next door. I felt my heart race whenever I heard that giggle, like it was just on the edge of something sinister. Was I dreaming? Or was it real? One evening, I decided to take out the trash, thinking fresh air would clear my head. I walked past that empty house that loomed in the twilight. The silence hung thick. I stopped, glancing at the porch again. I swear I saw something move behind the curtains, but when I looked closely, nothing was there. I turned and hurried back inside, feeling cold even though it was warm outside. The nights grew longer, and every little sound made me jump. I think I heard footsteps sometimes, like someone shifted in the shadows over there. I told myself I was imagining things. But how do you explain the feeling of being watched? It felt real, like someone was pushing against the walls of my sanity. Finally, one night, I decided I couldn't let this fear control me anymore. I stood at my window, staring into the dark house next door. The laughter came again. It was louder this time, and my breath caught in my throat. I felt brave, but maybe I was just stupid. Then I saw a face, pale, pressed against the glass, grinning widely. My heart thundered in my chest. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. I turned my back to the window, my skin crawling, and then, just as I thought I could escape that gaze, I heard a whisper behind me, "Why are you here?" I turned around, but there was no one there. The following days were a blur of anxiety. I tried to work, but my focus was shattered. I couldn't shake the feeling that something darker lingered in that empty house, something that had come out to play those nights. I felt the weight of those pale eyes pressing against my mind, following me. I kept a closer watch on the house. During the day, I peeked through my curtains, hoping to see anything that could make sense of this unsettling situation. I noticed the furniture on the porch had shifted slightly, though I was sure it hadn't moved days before. It had been piled carelessly. Now the haphazard arrangement felt more deliberate. I shivered at the thought of someone touching it. One evening, as the sun dipped lower, I overheard a conversation between two neighbors outside. They were chatting about the old house next door. Curious, I stepped out onto my porch but kept my distance. "They say it's haunted," one neighbor laughed, brushing it off. "I wouldn't go near that place. No telling what's in there." That comment sent a chill down my spine. Haunted? I wanted to laugh it off, but the whispered laughter and shadowy figures felt too real. "What about the family that lived there?" I asked hesitantly. The other neighbor, a tall man with a beard, glanced over at me, eyes widening. "Well, they say they moved after strange things started happening. Voices. Sounds. No one knows what it was. It was just too disturbing." Their words echoed in my mind as I retreated back into my house. After hearing that, my fear transformed into an unsettling urgency. I needed to understand what was happening. I gathered my courage and decided to investigate the empty house. Standing before it, my heart raced. Evening shadows conspired against me. I walked along the porch, feeling the uneven planks beneath my feet. A musty smell filled the air. Sunlight barely peeked through the curtains, and the peeling, faded paint gave the house a ghostly appearance. I reached for the doorknob, my hand trembling. It turned easily, and the door creaked open, revealing a dim hallway. My instincts screamed to turn back, but curiosity propelled me forward. I stepped inside, heart hammering. The air felt thicker, almost charged. I noticed bits of shattered glass on the floor, and the sound of my footsteps echoed through the empty spaces. A sudden gust of wind swept through, slamming the door behind me. I spun around, panic gripping my chest. That laugh echoed again, louder, closer. It filled the space like a laugh of someone playing a cruel joke. "Hello?" I called out, my voice quaking. Only silence answered. I peered into the dark rooms, half expecting something to lunge at me. My pulse quickened, and I knew I had to leave. Just as I turned to escape, I caught a glimpse of something beyond the broken window, a figure darting away from the house, slipping behind a tree. That's when I saw it, a flash of white, a small shape, and then it was gone. My breath caught in my throat as confusion washed over me. Who was that? I stumbled back outside, heart racing. Every instinct told me to run, but I was frozen. Whoever or whatever was in that house was not done with me yet. I stood there for a moment, heart pounding, trying to process what had just happened. My muscles felt tense, like a coiled spring. I glanced back at the house, shadows pooling in the corners, as if the walls were alive, watching me. The creeping dread wrapped around me like a cold blanket. A part of me wanted to bolt back inside my own home. But I couldn't leave without knowing more about that figure. I took a deep breath and forced myself to approach the window. The broken glass crunched beneath my foot as I stepped closer. I peered through the jagged opening, scanning the yard for any sign of movement. Nothing. Just the wind rustling the grass beneath the trees. I gingerly stepped away and paced in front of the house, trying to gather my thoughts. Who could have been in there? Why did they run? I knew I had to find answers. I felt like I was being pulled deeper into some unseen mystery. When I returned to my porch, adrenaline still coursing through me, I caught sight of my neighbor. She was still out there, and her laughter turned into nervous chatter with another neighbor. My urge to approach them was strong. Maybe I should ask them about that figure, I thought. Their laughter seemed trivial, a stark contrast to my turmoil. I took a step towards them but hesitated. Instead, I remembered the old house. I needed to search it again. I decided to return that night, but I needed a plan. Going in blindly had only heightened my fear. This time, I'd take the flashlight and maybe my phone for a quick escape route. When dusk settled, I felt the familiar anxiety grip me. I slipped a small flashlight into my pocket and stepped outside, the cool air biting at my skin. The old house loomed in front of me, darker now, engulfed in shadows. It felt different than before, like it was waiting for me. Guided by the beam of my flashlight, I crept along the overgrown path to the door. It seemed more ominous as I reached for the knob again. It turned just like before, and I slowly pushed the door open. The familiar smell of decay filled my nostrils, and I paused at the threshold. I stepped inside, the light flickering against the walls, revealing scattered debris. My heart raced, louder than ever. I decided to explore upstairs this time. I climbed the creaky staircase, each step a reminder of the countless times my imagination had run wild in this place. As I reached the top, the faintest whisper floated through the air. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. Was that a voice? I strained to listen, ears pricked for any sound. Help! The soft plea sent shivers down my spine. I wasn't alone. The voice was faint, almost melodious. But it dwindled into silence. I felt a deep knot of dread form in my stomach. Who was calling for help? Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a flicker of movement. A shadow blending into the wall. I spun around, raising my flashlight. And that's when I saw it, a small figure crouched in the corner of the room, hidden beneath a tattered blanket. My breath hitched. The figure was there, and I needed to know what it wanted. I took a hesitant step forward, my flashlight beam dancing nervously across the dim room. The lump beneath the blanket barely moved. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but curiosity pinned me in place. Hello? I called, my voice barely more than a whisper. The figure shifted slightly, revealing a small, dirty face framed by tangled hair. Wide, frightened eyes met mine. "Please," the child said, "don't hurt me." My heart twisted. A child? Here? My mind raced. What was a kid doing in this abandoned house? I felt a mix of relief and alarm. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to help." The figure shook their head, pulling the blanket tighter around themselves. "You can't. They'll find you." The cryptic warning sent a jolt of panic through me. Who would find me? Who are they? I asked, inching closer, trying to sound calm. The child's eyes darted around the room, filled with fear. "The shadows," they whispered. "They come for everyone." Before I could respond, a loud creak echoed through the floorboards behind me. I spun around, shining the flashlight toward the noise. The beam caught a glimpse of a dark shape moving further down the hallway. My stomach dropped. I turned back quickly, panic surging through me. "We have to go," I said, urging the child to stand. But they only curled tighter into their blanket, trembling. I was torn between wanting to protect this child and the instinct to flee. Then a low, guttural sound resonated from the direction of the hallway. It was unlike anything I had ever heard, deep, menacing, and echoing with a sense of hunger. A chill crept over me. "Please come with me," I urged again, reaching out to take the child's hand. Just then, the light flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed the room. I felt a rush of cold air, like a breath brushing against my neck. I fumbled for my phone, but fear made my fingers clumsy. I pressed the button, illuminating my surroundings once again. The child was gone. In the blink of an eye, the figure had vanished, leaving only the tattered blanket where they had been. I felt a wave of dread wash over me. Were the shadows real? Had they taken the child? I backed away slowly, still scanning the dim corners of the room. "Hello?" I called, hoping for an answer that wouldn't come. But silence enveloped me once more, thick and oppressive. Just then, my flashlight flickered again, and I heard the familiar whisper, a fleeting echo of that child's plea, but now it sounded like a crooning chant. Help! It filled the air, rich with sorrow and desperation. The shadows shifted. My heart raced. There was no time. I had to get out. As I stumbled back toward the staircase, footprints echoed behind me. Someone or something was following. I dashed down, the cold sweat trickling down my back as my mind raced. I had to get away before it was too late, leaving behind the haunting question of what had transpired in that room. That's when I heard a soft voice, clear as day, just behind me. "You can't escape." I froze, every nerve in my body screaming at me to move. The voice was chilling, threading its way into my mind. I whipped around, desperately shining the flashlight through the dim hallway, but nothing was there. Just shadows mocking me in the flickering light. I stepped back, my breath quickening. I had to leave this place. The warning from the child echoed in my ears. The shadows? They felt alive now. I turned and sprinted toward the front door, the sound of my footsteps loud against the creaking floorboards. As I reached for the doorknob, it twisted on its own, the door creaking open. The night air hit me like a wave, but I hesitated. Was it the shadows pulling me back, or something worse? A small part of me wondered if I could just face whatever was out there, rather than whatever lurked in the house. I stepped out onto the porch, the blood pounding in my ears. But then I saw it, a shape gliding silently at the edge of the trees across the yard, just out of the beams of my flashlight. It moved with an ease that defied human limitations. My instincts kicked in, propelling me forward. I didn't care what it was. I couldn't go back in there, but as I reached the edge of the porch, a whimper floated toward me. I stopped short. "Hello?" I called, confused. The sound came again, softer this time. Someone needed help. I squinted into the dark, trying to discern what was happening. When the sound turned into a distinct cry, I felt a tug of compassion and fear battling in my chest. It was coming from the woods. A part of me screamed to run, but another pulled me to investigate. With each step, I could feel the air grow colder, thicker. The flashlight slipped from my hand, hitting the ground. I cursed under my breath as I bent to pick it up. That cry, the way it echoed in the stillness, made it seem almost familiar. I stood straight, shivering as I aimed the beam into the trees. That's when I saw it, a figure crouched beneath a gnarled old tree. My heart sank. It was the same small face I had seen inside. "Why are you out here?" I whispered, hesitant to step closer. The child looked up, wide-eyed and trembling. "They're coming," they said. "You have to hide." Before I could respond, that guttural sound filled the air again, much closer this time. Panic rose in my throat. I wanted to scream, to run again, but I was frozen in place. The shadows started to swirl around the edges of the tree line, dark tendrils reaching out. "Please!" the child cried, urging me toward the tree. I realized now that there was no escaping this horror. Running only seemed to anger whatever was lurking in the darkness. I squatted beside the child, stirring up the dirt. "What are we supposed to do?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady even as the tremors of fear shot through me. Suddenly, a pair of glowing eyes pierced through the night, locking onto us, as if now we had both become the next targets. The darkness seemed to pulse, and in a terrible, flickering moment, it was clear. The shadows weren't just a threat, they were alive, and they were very, very hungry. That realization steeped into my bones just as I heard it again, that whispered chant. "You can't escape." And this time, it was coming from all directions. My instincts screamed for me to run, but the child's grip on my arm was tight. "Stay quiet," they whispered, the fear in their voice palpable. As the glowing eyes drew nearer, I could see them cutting through the void, fierce and predatory. I fought against a rising tide of panic. "Where do we hide?" I asked, my voice barely escaping my lips. My heart felt like it was about to burst. The shadows continued to writhe and pulse, moving closer, and I could swear I could feel the breath of something ancient wrapped around us like a vice. "Under the roots," the child urged, pointing to the twisted mass protruding from the gnarled tree. I hesitated, but there was no time. The glowing eyes were drawing closer, and the air buzzed with a malevolent energy. I dropped to my knees and scrambled beneath the roots, tugging the child along with me. The rough bark dug into my arms, but I barely registered the pain. "Tighten up," I whispered urgently, and we pressed ourselves into the dark space. The shadows enveloped us, blotting out what little light was left. Then there was silence. The chants faded to a distant echo, and the weight of the dark seemed to lift, albeit just a little. We huddled together, my heart racing as I strained to hear anything that would tell us we weren't alone. Suddenly, the ground vibrated beneath us. I pressed closer to the child, feeling their small body tremble against mine. Something heavy was passing above us, prowling the very thing those eyes belonged to. I sensed it sniffing the air, searching. "I thought I'd lost them," the child whispered, their voice trembling. "They were gone for days." "Who?" I asked, my throat dry. I needed to know what we were facing. "The shadows. They want to take me again. They say I belong to them." "What do you mean? Why would they want you?" But the child didn't respond. A sinking feeling settled in my stomach like a brick. I began to understand they were not just lost, they were something more. Fragments of their story swirled in my mind, each thought more desperate than the last. I glanced back at the tree roots, the crevices twisting like gaping mouths, hungry and dark. "We can't stay here," I breathed, grappling for some semblance of control. Just then, there was a grunt from above, followed by the sharp snap of branches. I held my breath, the silence echoing in my ears. And then, as if in a sick twist of fate, a piercing scream erupted from somewhere in the distance, a sound so raw and tortured that it made my blood run cold. It was human, and it was terrifying. The child whimpered beside me. "They're taking her." I felt like I was about to be sick. "We have to move," I said, my voice catching in my throat. "Now." With one last look at the darkness that was their home, I pulled the child out from beneath the roots. We had no choice. The thing above us was still hunting, and the shadows were closing in around us. As we made a break for the tree line, a furious howl filled the night, sending a jolt of fear through me. I stumbled, and before I could catch myself, a dark figure lunged from the shadows, blocking our escape. With no path left to run, I stood rooted in place, the fear thickening around me. I was ready to defend the child, to fight against whatever terror was looming, but all I could manage was a choked whisper. "What now?" And then everything went black. I gasped as I regained consciousness. The world was a dark blur, my senses engulfed in an unsettling quiet. I tried to move, but my body felt heavy and unresponsive. Panic surged through me like electricity. Where were we? I blinked against the shadows, desperately searching for the child. "Are you there?" I croaked, my voice hoarse and scratchy. A rustle nearby answered me, and the child's small form emerged out of the darkness. Their wide eyes reflected fear, but they were unharmed. "I thought you were gone," they whispered, relief washing over their face. "What happened?" I asked, shaking my head, trying to clear the fog. "Where are we?" "The shadows brought us here," the child replied, glancing around nervously. "They wanted to keep us safe, but I don't think they will for long." A chill crept down my spine. The shadows had a will of their own, and I wasn't sure how to trust them. "We need to find a way out. Let us stick together." Slowly, I pushed myself to my feet. The air was thick with something oppressive, like we were trapped in a bubble that held our fears at bay. I cupped my hands over my mouth and shouted, "Hello? Is anyone out there?" Silence met my words. It felt as if the noise was swallowed by the darkness. The child watched me anxiously. "They hear you." "Who?" I asked, but I hardly expected an answer. I was about to question again when that blasted scream pierced the silence once more agonizing than before. It was a sound I recognized all too well from before, and it set my nerves alight. Someone was in trouble. What if they take us, too? The child whimpered. I took a deep breath. We can't let that happen. I spotted a faint glimmer in the distance, a small sliver of light that broke through the darkness. It flickered like a candle, hesitant yet inviting. "There. We can make it to the light," I urged, gripping the child's arm with reassuring strength. We moved cautiously, the darkness seeming to stretch and pull at us as we approached the light. With each step, I felt more confident. Maybe we could escape this nightmare, but then, as we rounded a bend, something flickered in the shadows. A figure, tall and looming. My heartbeat quickened, dread tightening my chest. "Don't look back," the child said, pulling me closer. "Just run." And that's when I heard it, a low growl that rumbled through the air, chilling me to the bone. A flicker of movement grew closer, and I knew without a doubt that it was following us. "Run!" I yelled, panic rising afresh as we broke into a sprint toward the glimmering light, the darkness clawing at our heels. My thoughts raced wildly as we fled, unable to wrap my mind around how we could escape. Just as I reached out for the light, it vanished. Everything went dark again, but this time, I heard laughter. Cold, twisted laughter that echoed off the walls of whatever trap we had stumbled into. Then I felt the ground beneath me shift, and before I could comprehend what was happening, I stumbled into an unseen void, a new terror unveiling itself. I landed hard, the impact knocking the breath out of me. The ground felt uneven, as if I had fallen onto a bed of jagged stones. I gasped and scrambled to sit up, panic clawing at my throat as I searched for the child. "Are you all right?" I called out, my voice trembling. "Here," they replied, their voice small but steady. I turned to see them nearby, also struggling to pull themselves together. Together, we surveyed our surroundings, realizing for the first time where we had ended up, a desolate room shrouded in shadows. The air was stale and heavy, and a peculiar smell like burnt wood filled my nostrils. I blinked slowly, trying to adjust to the dimness. "What is this place?" I whispered, a sense of dread creeping in. The child shivered beside me. "I don't know. It's different from before." They pointed ahead to a door partially ajar, the wood splintered and warped, darkness pooling around it. "We have to go." I nodded, glancing back to where we'd come from. The sound of the laughter still echoed, a cruel reminder of our pursuer. I took the child's hand, squeezing it tightly. "Let us see what's beyond that door." We made our way over, each hesitant step amplifying the tension in the air. As we neared, the laughter quieted to a murmur, as if acknowledging our arrival. I pushed the door open cautiously, the rusted hinges squealing like a wounded animal. The room was larger than the one we had stumbled into, filled with old furniture draped in dusty sheets. Faded curtains hung limply in the corners, casting strange shadows that twisted and writhed on the walls. A feeling of wrongness clung to the space, making my skin crawl. "Stay close," I instructed, wary of the potential dangers lurking just out of sight. As we took a few steps inside, my attention was drawn to the far wall where something shimmered. It looked like glass, a mirror perhaps, but it was distorted, the reflection chaotic and shimmering as if the surface were boiling. "That's strange," the child murmured, dread in their voice. I stepped closer, compelled by an inexplicable force. The closer I got, the more the reflection changed, showing fleeting glimpses of moments we'd experienced before, the scream, the dark figure, flashes of light. It was as if the mirror knew all our fears, all our memories, and was forcing us to confront them. "What is happening?" I breathed. Then, the reflection shifted again, revealing a shadowed figure behind us in the room, looming just outside our line of sight. My heart sank. "Turn around," I whispered, my voice barely audible that I felt the child tremble, but we had to face this. Slowly, we turned. To my horror, I saw there was nothing there. Just an emptiness that seemed to stretch endlessly. Yet, it felt wrong. I turned back to the mirror, desperation creeping in. Then, a sharp noise cut through the silence, a crack, like ice breaking. The mirror began to ripple violently, and the surface twisted, warping our reflections into grotesque versions of ourselves. "Get back!" I shouted, pulling the child away from it. With a sickening certainty, I understood, whatever was behind us, whatever terror that haunted this place, was angry and it was coming for us. We needed to act fast. "We have to find another way out," I said, scanning the room anxiously. But just as I did, the mirror shattered with a resounding clang, sending shards of glass flying like daggers. "Move!" I yelled, dragging the child as we darted away, heart racing, my mind spinning. Questions were flooding my thoughts. What had we unleashed? I glanced back at the shattered remnants of the mirror, dread building inside me like a storm. That's when I noticed something amidst the chaos, a glint of silver that seemed to pulse in the dim light. I knew we had to find out what it was. But then, the laughter returned, louder this time, as if answering some unspeakable question I'd yet to ask. I raced towards the glint, my heart thundering in my chest. The child followed closely, breathless and wide-eyed. The shards of glass crunched beneath our feet, scattering further as we moved. I reached the source of the silver, crouching down to examine it amidst the chaos. It was a locket. Nearly hidden among the glass, its surface was ornate, engraved with swirling designs that caught the dim light. I picked it up, feeling the coolness of the metal against my palm. Something about it felt familiar, and a chill ran down my spine. "He has it," I murmured, remembering the dark figure from the past that haunted my thoughts. "We shouldn't be here," the child whispered, and I could hear the fear in their voice. I knew they were right, but something compelled me to hold onto the locket. A gust of wind whipped through the room, rustling the sheets covering the furniture. It felt wrong, almost alive. I glanced around, sensing the oppressive weight of it all, a presence lurking just beneath the surface. "Let us go," I said sharply, pockets the locket as I rose and tugged the child along. We headed for another exit, scanning the room for signs of a way out. Every nook and cranny seemed to pulse with unease. To our left, the door we had entered through was now blocked by a wall of swirling shadows that rose like thunderclouds, blocking our escape. The laughter echoed again, this time closer and more sinister. "We can't go back that way," I said. "There has to be another door." The child pointed to a smaller door on the far side. It was painted a deep red, a stark contrast to the ashen walls. "What if that one opens?" Both of us felt the urgency. I nodded, trying to push down the fear that clawed at my insides. We dashed to the red door, skirting the edges of the room, my pulse quickening with every step. Reaching the door, I reached for the knob. Cold metal met my palm. I turned it slowly, anxiety twisting in my gut. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow hallway lined with faded, peeling wallpaper that seemed to pulse in the dimness. Before stepping through, I glanced back at the room, relief flooding my senses when I saw the shadows retreating. But that relief was fleeting. The laughter rose in intensity, as if angered by our departure. "Quick!" I urged, propelling us forward down the hallway with urgency. The air was thick, and the unsettling scent of burnt wood lingered even here. I could feel it. Something was watching us, something that had been waiting in the dark. As we hurried deeper into the hallway, a soft glow began to emanate from the end. My heart raced. Maybe there's a way out, I thought, but then, everything went dark. The lights flickered and died, and I stopped, panic surging back. "No! No!" I said, my voice cracking. The child tightened their grip on my hand, fear palpable between us. A voice drifted through the darkness, resonating with the laughter we'd heard before. "You can't escape, not yet." That chill returned, and I knew that whatever this place was, it held secrets I wasn't prepared to face. I couldn't let it get to us. "Stay close," I whispered. But even as I said it, I felt the shadows closing in around us, ready to consume us whole. The darkness swallowed everything. I felt the child's fear next to me. It electrified the air, clinging to my skin like the shadows themselves. "Don't look back," I whispered, steadying my breath. Those chilling words echoed in my mind as I realized the escape we sought was slipping away. Just like the light, I forced myself to move forward, and as I did, I could sense the walls closing in, shifting with every heartbeat. That low growl resonated through the air again, reverberating with both menace and hunger. I held tightly to the child's trembling hand, my thoughts racing. I couldn't afford to panic. We wavered on the brink of a precipice, and I needed to lead us back to safety. Suddenly, a shimmer caught my eye ahead. It flickered within an unconscious groove on the wall, an all too familiar pulsing light. The anticipation surged in me. Could it be our way out? The light danced erratically, painting the flaking wallpaper in hues of sepia and gray. I grabbed the child and charged toward it. As we neared, the light expanded, morphing into a swirling vortex, a door to another realm or an illusion crafted by the shadows. Whatever it was, desperation clawed at my insides. "We have to jump!" I shouted, pulling the child along as the growls grew more distinct. "Wait! Be careful!" they cried, hesitation rising in their voice. But I couldn't pause. Not now. Not when the very air around us buzzed with the kind of dread that could lunge at our heels any second. With a final surge of courage, I leaped. The instant my feet left the ground, I felt a pull, a horrible sensation as if I was both spiraling and suspended. For a breathless moment, we hung in the realm of uncertainty, then we landed thump hard against something yielding and cool. Blinking, I took in my surroundings. We lay in a pile of damp leaves and cold grass. Above us a moon hung high and full, casting an eerie glow upon a landscape that felt deceptively peaceful. The air was still, devoid of the screams and chaos, yet something lingered in the atmosphere, a weight as if the shadows had seeped through with us. "Are we safe?" the child asked, their voice trembling. Their eyes darted around, searching for threats hidden beneath the moonlight. I sat up, taking stock of our surroundings. We were outside. The old house loomed in the distance, its windows dark and silent beneath the moonlight. But a sick twist coiled in my stomach. "I don't know," I whispered back, the question hovering in both our minds. At just then, laughter danced through the air, familiar and mocking. It echoed from the house, and I remembered the faces pressed against those windows. "Why do I feel like it's not over?" I thought, my heart racing anew. Had we truly escaped, or had we only opened the door to something worse? As we slowly rose to our feet, the familiar tugging dread returned sharp like an unwanted memory. I looked at the child, and for a fleeting second, I thought I saw them shift, their features becoming less solid, as if part of the shadows themselves. But just as quickly, they came back to form, fear brimming in their eyes. "I want to go home," they shouted, panicking. The words hit like ice. "Me too," I admitted, the weight of what we had faced threatening to crush me. But deep down, I wondered if we truly could go back. I thought of the neighborhood, the innocent beige houses, the neighbors chatting on porches, laughter that melted into something sinister. I turned back toward the house. Its very presence felt like an unhealed wound, raw and pulsating. Although, a small part of me felt drawn to uncover the truth of what had happened, the unanswered questions clawing at my sanity. I think we should leave, the child said, their voice a fragile thread. I nodded slowly, resigning to the instinct that screamed at us to run. Together, we stepped away from darkness's grasp, leaving only echoes of laughter behind. As I stole one last glance at the old house, the shadows flickered, a promise of what might still lurk within. Leaving that night, the door closed behind us, but even the dim moon couldn't dispel the questions lingering like shadows in my mind. Was it truly over? I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if that house still stands, if the shadows still whisper. But mostly, I try not to think about it. I don't think I could bear it.